This is part 3 of a 3-part podcast.
Hi, this is Mark. There are a lot of reasons to get angry these days, but I prefer to focus on the positive things that we each can do to make this world a better place. The book, Building a Better World in Your Backyard, Instead of Being Angry at Bad Guys, is a great resource for just that. Instead of throwing my arms up in frustration at governments or big corporations, there's a list of ideas that we each can tackle to affect change. Information about this book and other resources can be found at Permies.com.
I saw, did Mike have to go? I saw his, yeah, damn. I did want to talk a little bit about the SKIP program and the idea of having people study SKIP and then get land. Now, this is a great time to point out that Alexandra recently hit PEP 2.
Yay.
I said that the first person that hits PEP 2, and Alexandra is technically the second person because Mike got there like, a week and a half before you did?
Who's counting?
But Mike's not pursuing land. He's already got his little land. And so, but Alexandra is pursuing land. You're looking for an Otis. And and so far you have talked to some Otises, but you have not come across the situation that you would like to have. Is that accurate?
I would say I'd like to sum it up by saying I'm looking for something permanent. Something where I can guarantee that my kids will be able to continue to live on the land. And so, granted, I've gotten opportunities to have land, like access to land, which is, pretty significant for a lot of people. For me, I'm thinking about, my future generations. And so for me, that's a threshold that I have to meet.
Okay. So some of the Otises I've talked to were a bit like that, like, oh yeah, I would like to find a skipper that is going to come onto my land and be my personal bitch. And it's like, that's not what this program is about. But those people are like in their 50s and 60s. And then the people that I talk to that are like in their 80s and 90s, they're like, I need to find somebody to will my land to today because I'm not sure if I even have another month to go. And I talked to those people years ago. My guess is they're not around anymore. And so, but it sounds like the people that are in their 50s and 60s are contacting you now and saying, hey, I've got raw land. I'll let you have access to it and you'll spiff it out for me. And then I'm going to tell you to piss off and then I'll have this spiffed out land. It'll be great. Come be my personal bitch.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Yeah. I think in those cases, there are grandchildren involved. And so I feel like the likelihood of me being welcome there indefinitely or my kids there indefinitely seems uncertain to me.
Okay. I'm thinking okay, now is the time to get started on, so I don't know how many Otises might possibly be listening to this, but now we have our first PEP 2 person. I believe have you completed 300 SKIP projects at this point?
Yeah, 301.
Okay. All right. So, quite a lot of projects. And so, anybody who is an Otis could go and it's like, I think if you go to the leaderboard, they could see your name and they click on it and then they can start to follow all the links to go and see all of the evidence of each of the 301 projects. And so, if in case in case anybody doesn't believe that you've completed 301 projects, they can go and see all the details of all of those projects. And so, and now is the time to talk to Alexandra about, what your offer might be. And I kind of feel like years ago, we had one Otis stand up and say, I'm an Otis and here's my situation and I'm looking for a skipper. And we observed that person get utterly flooded by people that had 0 BBs. They have not put anything into this skipper program saying, I'm the best candidate and you should will your land to me. And so they were so flooded with bullshit on permies that we advised all the Otises to be silent and quiet. And then we've had people who said, I'm an Otis, and they were, I don't know, looking for something that wasn't quite the same. But all right. The thing is that today there might be those people where, 5 years ago their story was different, and today the story is so. The thing that we've always said about an Otis is that they might have grandchildren, but they're looking to will their land to somebody who wants to live on the land and continue doing homesteading and stuff like that, as opposed to just simply sell it and move on, which is what their kids are planning on doing. And so even if there are grandchildren involved, then they're looking for somebody that is not their children or grandchildren or whatever. They're looking for somebody who wants to be a full-time homesteader. And basically, you have effectively proven that you are a homesteader, that you are somebody who does these things and you have these skills. Fair?
Yes.
Okay. I think that when we talk to people about a humble home and a large garden, I think that this is one of the paths, is the skip path, where it's something you could do at the same time as having a full-time worky job, and you could find yourself inheriting land. In fact, inheriting a full homestead, complete with multiple homes and all the accoutrement. And I hope that Alexandra is about to prove it to be true in the next couple of weeks. And so, we've got some steps to do still to kind of get this first case scenario to happen. But all right. I kind of feel like we're 2 hours plus into this whole thing.
I feel like it just got exciting.
Okay. I mean, I'm glad to talk some more about Skip. And
no, it's fair. It's fair. I guess I didn't quite realize the conversation today would revolve only around AI, and so I had kind of come up with a few talking points that I wanted to share about, the SKIP program, what that journey was like, and sure, there could be Otises here, but maybe there are a few people that are considering SKIP. And so, and also, I would like to personally really advocate for having more, in-person skip workshops. I think that is just such a novel experience that I think everyone should do. There are so many basic skills that skip requires you to do that I think everybody should know. Plumbing, electricity, even just knowing some basics about some plants, knowing what's edible or not. There are just so many skills that help you be more connected to the things you use and the food you eat. And so, yeah, I highly advocate Skip as a program that I think everyone should do. I don't know if getting to Skip or PEP 2 is something everyone should do. It's a lot more work. Well, let's see. I don't know. Do you have any questions for me about it?
Well, I get the impression, I mean, we created the program for people like you that are like...
Oh, I disagree. I don't think it was created for people like me. I think it was created for, young people, like 18 to 25. I think that's what it was created for. But I'm not the creator. Go ahead.
So basically, one way to describe it is when Mike Ayler would call me and say, I need you to give me the name of somebody worthy to will my land to. And then I kind of talked about, well, you've had 100 interns. Why not pick one of them? And it's like none of them makes the cut. And I shared that with somebody, and they said, I think the problem is not the interns. The problem is Mike. And it's like, I think the problem is the massive gap between any one of those interns and Mike. And so the interns are kind of like, teach me the way that I want to be taught and allow me to be lazy, maybe. Allow me to be human in my way of being human. And, carry me into whatever it takes to be worthy. And Mike doesn't have what it takes to carry them. And so basically what the intern wants from Mike,
hand-holding.
Sure. Mike isn't into it. And at the same time, what Mike wants from the intern isn't into it. All 100 of them. There's this big gap between the two. So when Mike was calling me up saying, give me the name of somebody worthy. So you're saying, I ain't 18 anymore, therefore I ain't part of that. And it's like, and of course, Mike is now dead, but I would say that if Mike were alive and called me today, it's like, I have a name for you, and he would be happy, and therefore this is created for you.
I see. So,
because then the conversation happened like, okay, Mike, what does it mean, worthy? Like, what do you need? And it's like, have they put up a cord of wood? And it's like, I don't want to know whether they say they've put up a cord of wood. I need to know that they've actually done it. There's a massive difference between the two. Okay? So, there's proof that you've put up a cord of wood, right? I hope, right? That's a BB you probably did.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, I don't know, a lot of the first list of probably 30, 40 things were me asking Mike, like, how does a person prove their worth? How do you know they're worthy? What do you need to know that they're worthy? So today, Mike would be willing to will his land over to you, even though you've never been to Mike's place. Because Mike he was ready to sign it over. He just needed to know that you're worthy. And you now meet that criteria. Well, did we lose Alan?
He said he was going to have to go soon.
Okay.
I'm still here. I'll have to jump off in a couple minutes.
Okay. Alan, do you have anything else to add to this before you run away?
Hold on.
Joel Salatin read the Skip book And then I saw him give a presentation, and while he didn't quote the book or say the things he was saying on the stage were things that he got out of the Skip book. I thought that was pretty cool. But all right, Alan, do you have anything to say about Skip? Maybe.
I mean, I can't comment on too directly. By the time Skip came out, I was so late in my trajectory, and I have all kinds of things happening. I haven't actually done any of the Skip stuff. That was stuff, a lot of the things that were there are things that I did younger in life. But I guess what I would say is, in answer to a lot of these questions, we're in a place where I feel like there's a lot of uncertainty about what's going to unfold over the next 5 to 10 years. I think we're probably at a place where the uncertainty is higher than it's been over the last 50 years. And so to me, the practicality of the practical answer to any of these questions is maintain optionality, right? And so the things that we're talking about with Skip, which is like learning practical skills, right? And growing some of your own food and learning how to get by on considerably less and leaning into your community and create. So in other words, all the different forms of capital, knowledge capital, real capital, community, social capital, exactly. All of that's becoming increasingly important. And there are, the fact is that as modern education has become more abstract and more, thinking in your head, what Skip is trying to do is say, okay, let's just go in the opposite direction and let's get hands-on practical real skills that give you options no matter the complexity that emerges over the next decade. And I think that is probably the best way I could sum up the value for someone who is at that stage of life looking at things, looking maybe at it and saying, I don't know if I want to go sit in the classroom and learn all kinds of abstract stuff that for large sums of money that I don't know whether they're going to be useful in 5 years because it's so unpredictable versus, wow, I don't care what happens over the next 10 years. Knowing how to grow a garden, knowing how to put up a cord of wood, that doesn't go away. And it backstops and gives me fundamental primary skills that let me take care of myself, my family, and my community. I think that, so that would be my most succinct way of sort of like telling somebody who's coming through that question of, do I go to college? Do I do this or that? They say, well, shall I do Skip? I was like, well, this is the reason you might consider it, right? Does this make sense to you? That it gives you all of these, it gives you stuff that will probably serve you well no matter which way all these complexities we're talking about work out. And that's, I guess, how I might sum it up.
I suppose another thing is that Alexandra is getting offers from people to basically come and work for them. I mean, but why take on a worky job of being a land manager when Alexandra has all of the training to be an engineer? I mean, if she wanted to have a worky job, she could just, for money, she could keep doing that. But I think that, now she's far enough along. But yes, I think that we talked earlier about trades. I think Skip teaches a lot of trades, and it's like pick your fave kind of a thing. But the big thing, I do think that Skip is an answer to the part about getting land. But I think I have a bunch of other answers for getting land. But, the big one is to touch upon, and then the thing I think I was starting to say a moment ago was that Alexandra is the exact reason why we made Skip. And then to kind of circle back to something that Alan was just saying, I think what I see 85% of the people who are doing Skip projects I think what they are doing instead, like what they want out of it is, I did a project. I want somebody to check my work and tell me if I did it wrong. And so a person who has this experience will then look at what you did and give you feedback on whether you did it correctly or not. And so I get the impression that 85% of the people that are involved in SCIP right now, that's their goal. They just want to build the experience, to build the skills, and get verification, possibly validation, that they did it correctly. And it's like going to college and getting your test results. Like, okay, you stood in front of the class and talked about math, and so now I took a test and I gave it back, and you're going to tell me what my score is. And so in a way, that's kind of what it is. You're doing, you're carving a thing, you're building a rocket mass heater. Oh, and Alexandra, this is a good time to plug your rocket mass heater stuff as well. You're teaching rocket mass heater courses. Oh, and Alan's like,
I'm going to have to jump off. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else to add, Alan?
No, I'm great.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye.
So, Alexandra, do you want to plug the courses that you're teaching in rocket mass? You're teaching people how to build rocket mass heaters.
Yeah, I am. I have to say, I'm a PINA certified teacher, but yet I haven't, delved into that and really, expanded my teaching opportunities. But most of it was because, I think I didn't realize how much I had to teach. And so I will say I did some workshops to meet a BB, but I don't know if I would have voluntarily taught a workshop, at least this soon. Maybe I would have felt more prepared in 5-ish years, something like that. And so, doing SCIP really, I guess one of the SCIP ripples, as Rebecca likes calling it, and I like it too, is that it's pushed me out of my comfort zone to do things that I probably didn't think I was ready for. And so I taught a rocket mass heater workshop last year, and honestly, I'm surprised by how well everything went. And then I was surprised by how many people were surprised that it was my first workshop. And so it's kind of encouraged me to continue doing this. I have some opportunities to, build more rockets and involve community. I'm going to be meeting with a friend in another week or two who would like to build one at his house and have a workshop to go along with that. And I think this is just an opportunity that I'd always wanted to do, and I'm just glad that SCIP really encouraged me and pushed me, and it helped, in a stepwise function, kind of build my confidence to do that. And so, I will say in the future, it's funny, I'm constantly thinking, or at least right now, because I just finished PEP 2, so I wasn't really thinking about what happens next. So now that I've finished PEP 2, I'm kind of trying to figure out, well, what are my future steps? What would I like to do? And I will say I'm less inclined to do PEP 3 because it wouldn't, propel me to go deeper into rocket builds. And I see myself, I have my goal sheet here of what I want to try doing and exploring. And I think I'd like to do more in, batch box builds, and masonry heaters. So I see myself going a lot deeper in that realm, and also trying to teach as many people as possible. There is another community aspect, BB, of creating an LIC, and I like the idea of potentially creating an LIC for rocket builds. And that way I can help other people go past the hurdle of, it's one thing to read a book or watch a thing or even attend a workshop, but then to attend a workshop and then turn around and go do it by yourself, there's just huge hurdles. And so, I'm just trying to find ways of continuing to do more builds, and bringing more people in and, having more on display in my community too. I'm not sure if that addressed if you had a specific question around what I'm doing with rockets.
You mentioned something about like how you thought that, I think I remember you saying something about there should be more skip events. Like that would be a good thing. And it's like, so are you going to host some, or possibly maybe there's going to be somebody in your area that's going to host a skip event, and then you're going to be there to guide people? I know Rebecca's got a bunch of people in Idaho. She's got like people that are very active in skip, and they're kind of trying to encourage each other down the skip road. Right. I know you're in Colorado, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would love for you to host another skip event. I know Mike Hossel, now that he's gone from this call, he would like to start hosting skip events. In the future, when I have land, I would love to be able to host that as well. And just, essentially offer a different version of Gardening Gardeners. I can imagine I'm always going to be involved in this area of trying to help other people learn basic skills.
So I know that for the skip event, which I know you attended, we charged a certain amount for that, and we paid for a cook, and we paid for lots and lots of things for that event to happen. I know that for me, the event ran in the red, and it was subsidized by Kickstarters. And this is a good time to point out, and I don't know if I've ever put this into a podcast before, but we have found out that why have our Kickstarters been doing so poorly? And it's like we've finally found out why. And apparently only about 10% of our audience is receiving our emails. And so, and it's like, well, why is that? And it's like, well, remember that time 3 years ago where basically I stood up and threatened the income of some big energy place, and they then tried to do all these things to crush us. So they also, because it was about the same time that we were like, why are there all these people signing up with all these weird email addresses? They're signing up to Permies, but we don't see them like trying to spam or do anything naughty. They're just creating an account, and that's all they're doing. And there's like thousands of them. Well, it turns out it's about 20 to 30,000 of them. And we found out what was happening. And that is that those people now have the ability to convince other email entities that our email is so bad that now people don't even get our emails in their spam box. And then when that started to happen, we're like, how is this even possibly happening? And it's like, it's taken us more than a year to just not only figure out what is happening, but then to start taking the steps to correct it, to find those naughty emails and remove them from our system. But we've got months to go still. All right. Which means that now that you've gotten to PEP 2, we don't have the ability to tell everybody about how you got into PEP 2. And on top of that, when I would host those summer events, they were subsidized by my Kickstarters. And if my Kickstarter doesn't do well, then I can't subsidize those events. And so, but we did do a free event. We called it the BB20 event. And so we invited people who had BB20 or higher to just come out. And they would spend a week working on BBs and just eat the food that we have here. But those people tended to bring food, and so it all worked out as a free event. I thought it was pretty cool. We could do something like that again. We haven't done that in a few years because it doesn't really cost me anything to host it. I don't have to pay the cook or pay instructors or pay anybody. But we could put feelers out to see if people want to do it. Unfortunately, if we put feelers out to see if anybody wants to do it, hardly anybody gets those emails about those feelers. And so it's I don't know, only the people that are the most zealous about saying that's not spam and, coming out to Permies every day, even though they're not getting the emails driving them into Permies. That's the only people that'll find out. Although we are experiencing record traffic to Permies, which is wild. But
have you ever wondered whether a particular book was really good or just so-so, and if you could trust the reviews online? When it comes to books related to permaculture, Permies has a large list of reviews for over 100 books. Perhaps you're considering a book for yourself or a friend, or you're just curious about what's out there. Stop by Permies.com/book and take a look at the book review grid and read some honest reviews, and hopefully you'll find the next book to add to your collection.
Alexandra, are you thinking of coming back out here again for a BB event, even though you've now got PEP 2?
Oh, less to attend, more to support.
Okay. All right. Cool. I'm kind of hopeful that you might do something in your area that's far more convenient. All right.
Thanks for giving me that suggestion. I don't think I've ever really thought about that.
It seemed like you were doing a lot with rocket mass heaters. This was becoming a big passion of yours to not only, to move rocket mass heater stuff forward by teaching the courses and, I don't know, other related kinds of things. Am I thinking of this correctly?
Yeah. I chose for it to be a wood level project. I as you know, I went to Wheaton Labs for a rocket, I'm going to say jamboree. It wasn't quite a workshop, but I got a lot of different the tour of all the rockets, some rebuilds, some new builds, just a lot of really good exposure. And ever since going, I've always wanted to, employ those skills. And I relish the idea of being able to generate some sort of family business in the future to sustain our family.
Nice.
That's my hope.
So let's wrap up about the whole, and it's kind of AI, it's kind of not AI, it's kind of really anything. But I do feel like the humble home and large garden is really a solution to whatever the future may hold. And it's kind of funny, there's that whole branch of people that are preppers, but it seems to be, rather than a humble home and a large garden, which I would think would be the core of prepping, it seems to be...
It seems like more consumerism. Let's amass as much stuff as possible.
Yeah, I need 100 guns and 1,000 times more ammo than I could ever possibly shoot, and that's being a prepper. And much like what Alan was saying, if you've got really bad energy consumption habits and you're going to go get solar panels to support that, it's that is a lot of solar panels. So I see a lot of the prepper community here's my 30,000 watts of solar panels. And it's holy shit. It's 100 feet long. And it's that is a lot of solar panels. That's a lot of money right there. And I don't know. It just seems nuts to me. Whereas I'm thinking like, and then it's like, okay, well, how do you heat your home with heat pumps? And how big is your home? 4,000 square feet. And it's like, if you're going to be a prepper, I kind of feel like, you're kind of, first of all that solar stuff, if anything goes sideways and there's, it's zombie apocalypse, then something goes sideways with your solar stuff, aren't you going to kind of be out of energy? And like, you'll have nothing. Whereas, I don't know, I like the path of the rocket mass heater, because it turns out that in a cold climate such as Montana or Colorado or interior Washington state, about 60 to 75% of your energy consumption is for heat. And so it's kind of like, if you got a rocket mass heater, that solves an enormous portion of your or of your energy consumption. Then there's the whole thing of like, almost all these prepper sites I've seen, it's like they have an electric clothes dryer. And I'm kind of thinking like, oh,
that requires so much energy.
They are a massive energy pig.
It's an interesting thing to be an engineer and to want to advocate for appropriate tech or low tech. It feels like a contradiction sometimes, or at least other people assume that it is. I think, because, in engineering corporate world, it's how can you get the biggest tech, the most complicated tech. And it just seems silly to me, because too many moving parts decreases your reliability. But for me personally, and I don't think this applies to a lot of people, but in terms of my desires, I hope to have a humble home that isn't noticeable in the landscape, and energy needs that, aren't high, that don't require a job to have to pay for. It's just so minimal. I think it's funny. I went into engineering in the corporate world to have, a successful future of homesteading. And yet, I did skip because I wanted to prove to myself that, I could, last as a homesteader, without getting into it, the likelihood of somebody from the city migrating out of the city and then returning to the city. I just wanted to know that, we could, withstand that change or transition. Sorry, I have a question for how to get land for us Europeans who don't live in the U.S. and can't attend the boot camp. Tricky. Actually, I kind of feel like maybe I could answer that. And actually, sorry, I'm going all over the place. There are a lot of questions popping up.
Before you answer those questions, have you seen the series on YouTube that we made years ago about rocket mass heater myths? Okay, so
possible.
Basically, there is I was asked to come to Zach Weiss's greenhouse and look at his rocket mass heater stuff while there was a Sepp Holzer event happening on that property with Sepp Holzer. So Sepp Holzer is hauled away for 2 hours a day to go nap or something. And so during this time, Zach thought it would be fun for him to show to the group his rocket mass heater in a greenhouse. And so, and there was a young woman there.
I think I recall that.
And she was fresh out of college, and she felt very strongly that it should not be the Paul and Zach show. It should be the Her show, because her current job is about heating,
I think it was auditing.
Efficiently, something like that. But heating homes, heating heating efficiency engineering. So she's a freshly minted engineer, and this is her specialty. And as Zach and I spoke, she kept saying for the group that we're full of shit and that they should ignore everything that we're saying, especially me. And then on Reddit, somebody brought it up, and she stood up on Reddit and wanted to make it clear that Paul Wheaton's a dumb fuck, a windbag, and doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. So basically, I grabbed everything that she said, and it was the foundation of this series, because she's an engineer and she's following the rules that were presented to her. So, for example, a rocket mass heater cannot be more than 100% efficient, and we're talking about heating your home with 1/10 the wood compared to a wood stove that is rated at 75% efficiency. Simple math shows that it cannot, we're making claims of being 750% efficient, which is more than, so anyway, the great thing is that this is a branch of engineering, which you're just talking about. The woman never realized that the numbers that she's working with for wood stove efficiency have been fucked with a lot. And on top of that, just because it's rated at 75% efficiency doesn't mean it's operated at 75% efficiency. In fact, every night, most people are running their 75% efficient wood stove at 3% efficiency. And then once the fire goes out, now it's starting to suck the air out of your warm room and putting it up the chimney, thus making the system be negative efficiency. She never mentioned that because she doesn't know about that. And in fact, I'm not even sure she's ever run a wood stove, let alone a rocket mass heater. But she is willing to state that I'm a fucking idiot, and because what I'm stating is contrary to what she's been trained. Now here you are, another engineer, and you've probably been trained in the exact same things that she's been trained in, and yet you are foolishly pursuing rocket mass heaters. And so my guess is that you're willing to say that she's wrong and rocket mass heaters are right, because you're really kind of putting your all into rocket mass heaters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'd like for me to agree that she was wrong?
Well,
I do. I mean, those ratings are, you have to look at what they're based on. It's all relative to whatever, like you could say whatever number, and then in fine print say why, and it's marketing. But
I think in order to be able to say that she's wrong, you'd have to be looking at her exact statements.
Sure.
But
yeah, I would say these systems are highly efficient, and they burn clean once they get up to temp, and what else is there to say?
I think the key is that the 75% efficient wood stove is actually operating at about 50% efficiency, while the rocket mass heater is actually operating at 93% efficiency. And I'm going to say 93 because that's what Peter Vandenberg says. Mm-hmm. And he's measured a lot of them.
Gotcha.
And so I'm going to go with that number, but really, I think it's going to be a list of a dozen different little things. And the first item on the list is people tend to operate their 75% efficient wood stove at 3% efficiency every night. During the day, they might get it up to 40%. But at night, they tend to close the dampers a lot, mm-hmm. put a big juicy log in there, and then try to get an all-night burn.
And then eventually let the warm air escape through their chimney.
Yeah.
I think these are highly efficient systems. They're contraflow systems, so they kind of have that, opposite P-trap effect to prevent that. Gosh, I mean, even with a rocket oven, that's a very inefficient system. There's no mass. I'm not really, just being able to cook, 2.5 dozen pizzas, and run it for less than an hour and a half with less than a 5-gallon bucket worth of wood. I mean, I actually, what's funny a little bit to me is a lot of people have asked me to talk to them about a cob oven, as if I'm now an expert on cob ovens and how to build them or something. And my answer is just don't build one, please.
Yeah.
Because it uses so much wood, and the amount of time it takes.
And in fact, speaking of smoke.
Smoke. There's a lot of smoke.
This is so. I did a little short travel the last 2 days, and so I was at a place that's called a resort for one night, and it was so smoky, it was horrible. And it's like, but everybody in town is burning their brush piles. Mm-hmm. Including at the resort. So everything is covered in smoke. And as a guy that had to dance around the cancer comedies recently, smoke, in fact, wood smoke causes cancer. It's 100 times more carcinogenic than cigarette smoke. And so it's like, boy, go easy on that wood smoke. But of course, they were filling the air with it. And it's like, of course, what I want them to do is either A, run it through a rocket mass heater where it burns so cleanly that there is no smoke, or B, use that material in their horticultural endeavors, maybe hugelkultur, maybe mulch, something like that. The funny thing is, at this so-called resort, they were actively burning their brush pile, this excessive organic material that they no longer wanted. But I could tell that everywhere I walked on the property, they had mulched with purchased mulch. And it's kind of like, and it's like, but I'm not going to say anything because I'll just sound crazy. And so, all right, sorry, smoke, and it's like wildfires and wildfire prevention. Could we use those materials to heat our homes rather than just pour smoke into our atmosphere? Smoke and carbon dioxide. All right. Sorry. Let's see if we can. Geez, we're coming up on hour 3. Okay. Let's see if we can wrap up. First, Alexandra, do you have anything else that you would like to talk about today?
I think there is something I'd like to mention, and I guess it's more of like what happens after PEP, whatever, right? And this kind of journey to try to find a match. And a few things have come up that I hadn't thought about a month ago, or even at the beginning of doing Skip. And I guess a few things I want to mention is, in hindsight, I wish I had, in every task that I did, inserted a little more of my own self or personality. I wonder if that makes a difference, instead of, here's the task and done, but, a little more of like sharing about myself, because to some degree, I could imagine if somebody does give me an offer, I don't know if they're planning on leaving the land, but maybe cohabitating the land. And so I think there's a certain element of, it would be nice to kind of get to know me, or really both ways. But this program is kind of structured so that it's only one way. But, if I were to have advice for somebody new getting into it, maybe creating a little more narrative or sharing more of their personal selves embedded in what they're doing. Or, and I guess the other aspect that I want to mention on that with regard to me is I'd like to kind of convey a message of, I think it would be lovely to cohabitate the land with somebody who knows the land, knows the history. Even better would be somebody who's living on the land and their families lived on the land for generations, and having that story embedded. I think that really would be lovely. But hopefully they like my kids. But I am a package deal, and I think Skip is really supposed to be, an individual or solo endeavor. And, it's not just me. It's also my family too. But I have to say I'm a little hesitant with sharing too much information about my kids. I guess I'd like to encourage any Otis that might be considering reaching out to me to just reach out and we can chat. Like, it doesn't have to be, a formal offer. So I think that's what I'd like to add to it.
You have a thread now that talks about what you're looking for, right?
I have posted what I'm looking for in the Skippers and Peppers thread. So anyone who has a certain number of tasks completed can add their little bit to it. Things that I'm looking for are kind of like three part. One is I want to be in a cold climate, mostly because I think that'll be more resilient in the future, but also because I would like to continue working on rockets, and I don't think rockets in the desert makes a lot of sense. The second aspect is I'd like to have access to water, and not municipally treated, just a good source of water. And then the third is, a sufficient amount of land such that I could support a gardeners program or community. So I would like for there to be enough land that I could welcome, community to the land.
So what I'm going for is to say, if you've got a thread where the whole thread is your story, what you're looking for about you and your family, things like that, you could edit your signature on Permies to say that you now have PEP 2 and you're looking for your Otis match details over this thread.
Yeah, both of those things are contained in my signature. I suppose I should be changing my countdown thread to just be my story thread at this point. But those two links are in my signature. Okay.
The thing is that because it would be in your signature, then it would appear for every post that you've made for every BB that you put together. So in a way, you're kind of doing the thing that you, in hindsight, that you wish you had done from the beginning. In a way. Kind of, sort of. Yeah. Not really, but sort of. Okay. Now, before I go and ask Samantha about anything she wants to add to today, then there's somebody saying on the little chatty chat, are you guys going to answer the question or did you forget us? So you were about to answer something. And so, okay, is this it? I have a question for how to get land for us Europeans who don't live in the U.S. and cannot attend the boot camp. Specifically, I'm from Serbia. So what is the best first income to get? Okay. First of all, I think that Skip is global. When we've gotten emails from Otis's, they were all over the world. And then I know that some of the people that have been working on Skip are like, oh, yeah, how many Otis's are within 50 miles of me? It's like, not even going to touch that question. So I wanted to say that I don't know about Serbia. I'd have to go. I started tuning out all the Otis stuff a long time ago because there was just so much of it. But as far as like a humble home and a large garden, as I was talking about that at one place, somebody said, oh, like what happened in Russia when they switched from whatever to whatever, like 20 years ago, then suddenly everybody switched to gardening. And they kind of all already had humble homes, but with gardens. And everybody just ramped up all their gardening in a major way. And I'm like, well, I don't know enough about that, but sure, sounds good. But as far as like boot camp from Serbia, I wish I could say that I knew of lots and lots of gardeners programs all over the world, but I kind of feel like for me to officially write the book Gardening Gardeners or even to announce Gardening Gardeners as a formal thing on Permies so that other people can copy and paste it or whatever, I need to have at least one success. And that's the permaculture boot camp. And in order for it to be a success, I kind of feel like we need the boot camp to be full, 20 people or so, and for there to be a waiting list of people waiting to get into the boot camp. And we don't currently have either of those. And so, therefore, I mean, if I have this big audience and I can't fill the boot camp, I think it would be difficult for 100,000 homesteads who don't have a mailing list at all to fill a Gardening Gardeners program. And so I need to come up with something that seems to work. I recently finished a book called Sun House, and anyway, they're talking about building intentional community in Montana, which I thought was pretty fun. But they specifically said we are not an intentional community because all intentional communities fail. We're going to call ourselves a menagerie. I thought that was delightful, and I don't think it's it's not that all intentional communities fail, but that the failure rate is extremely high. It is above 95%. So. And that's kind of the function of Gardening Gardeners. I'm trying to come up with a recipe that is better. It's not perfect, but it's better. Like, can we have something that has a much higher success rate? But so far, I mean, we do have people that have been here, several people that have been here longer than 2 years, which is a good sign. But I don't know if it doesn't take off. I guess either it's proof that I'm wicked and I suck, or I'm just awful or something like that, or the whole idea is it's a really bad idea. But then if I suck and it works, then it must work so good it makes up for my sucking. So, but I think before I can even advocate for Gardening Gardeners, I have to have at least one case where it's working. Okay.
There are a number of questions coming in. And so I think there's one question like, what sort of job do I need to get first? I'm not sure if that's really a PEP or SKIP related. But then there are questions like, how do I build the skills if I don't even have access to land yet? And what I would say is I couldn't do a number of projects where I'm currently living. And so going to the SKIP workshop in Montana or even just going out to visit and taking my family for, over a month is a way to make it happen. But I would say in starting to broadcast to people I know and people in my community of the things that I'm doing, provide a lot of ripples and opportunities and relationships and request, can you do this over here? I reached out to people that I knew in the past that I thought maybe I could do a project with, and that all those things wouldn't have happened if I wasn't telling people what I was attempting to do. So I think you might be surprised if you look into your community how you can work on these projects without having to need the land. I'll give you an example. I needed to thresh and winnow 2 gallons of grain, which I'm going to say was the BB I liked the least. That was an incredible amount of work. I wasn't able to grow that much, so I needed to find somebody that was growing organic wheat that I could go and harvest from. And, it was just a matter of asking a whole bunch of people. And eventually I found a connection, but it took a lot of effort. And I just want to say it's all possible. It does take effort.
Hey, Samantha, how much organic wheat do you have?
A lot.
How much organic wheat do I have?
Yeah, how much organic wheat do you have right
certainly
now?
Have 400 bushels. Why do you ask?
Well, because I heard a rumor that somebody was looking for some organic wheat that they wanted to be able to
harvest,
thresh and winnow, and I just it was just being talked about a second ago.
Yeah, right. Well, this is already harvested. All the wheat in our area has been harvested as we're going into winter. But there's wheat grown here every year. Like,
yeah.
If I was your neighbor, Samantha, I'm sure that would have been so easy.
Well, I grow wheat myself. It's actually really easy to grow. I mean, you can't hurt it.
This is true. It would be really hard for somebody to grow it on their own if they didn't have any land to grow it on.
Yeah.
And then there was a question about, what sort of job should I get or something like that. And I would say, something that has been interesting to me as I've been doing Skip is that I've met so many people that I think would be able to do Skip far easier than I would. They already are doing this. They didn't have to change anything. And I just find that to be so interesting. Or maybe they have a job where they're doing half the things. So can you find some sort of farm help or something that would help meet those needs or give you access to land? I think all of those things could be, figured out. If you ask that landowner, I see this land that you're not using in this corner. May I use it? And this is my intention, and take ownership of it. I think you can create your own opportunities, but you have to do a little bit of the work. A lot. You have to do all the work, not a little bit of the work, all of it.
I think step one is to cruise through the easy 20 BBs. And so somebody made a list of what are the easiest BBs. And so cruise through that. And then once you've got BB 20, then when you start to tell people about what you're doing and how you'd like to be able to find land, it's amazing how people are like, oh, you want to come to my house and put up a cord of wood?
Yeah.
What's the catch? What do I have to do? Maybe give you a sandwich? It's so you're telling me I'll get a cord of wood and it'll cost me a sandwich. I was like, I'm in, baby. And it's I was like, oh, you want a place to come and do my chores? It was like, sure. That sounds, how can that go wrong? So I think once you get started, and then as you're visiting with who knows who, plus, I don't know, I think that there's isn't there nearly 1,000 people that have at least one BB on Permies right now? And so just talking about it on Permies, you could probably find somebody in your neighborhood that would be like, oh, I'd love to have a BB20 event at my house. I could get all my wood put up for the winter.
Yeah, I ran some numbers for my personal journey. I've done 301 BBs, but 10 of them weren't necessary to get to PEP 2. So of the 291 remaining, 43% of those were BBs that I would probably normally be doing and probably would have already done at this point. So 43%, easy. I'm already doing them. Then there was 23% of the BBs, so 69 BBs, that I speculate I probably would have done in like a 2 to 5 year plan. And then in my lifetime, there's another 47. I'm sure I would have gotten to it. And then there were 45 that I really had to push for. 45 that I probably never would have done or definitely didn't have any arrangement for it. And so for 45 BBs, I had to work extra hard to figure out how to get those done. And so, I agree with what you were just saying, Paul, get the ball rolling. And, these things can take time, but, it's about relationships and, following through and what opportunities come after that.
All right. Do we have any more questions we want to try and take on before we run away? So I'm thinking Andreas has been staying on top of him.
We did have a couple more questions. Do you feel like we've answered this person? There's a high school kid, trying to find a way to how to get started in Serbia. Do you have any more suggestions?
I would say start with the first 20. And my guess is that you can go, once you get the first 20 done, it's amazing what opportunities open up for the next 20.
Okay.
I'm curious as to the panel's awareness / interest into free Libre open source software and its connection to permaculture and broader social movements. I use it sometimes, but I'm not aware of its connection to permaculture specifically or broader social movements. Anybody else?
Yeah, there are some open source software and plans and things that just a huge database of what people offer up for free so that other people can benefit from it or not.
Okay. Any other bits and bobs to talk about?
So someone says, I converted my entire backyard to a garden. They doubt they could feed themselves for even a couple of months. They ask, how much would you expect from a home?
Okay. So I've got a video out about that I think is pretty great, where I think the name of the YouTube video is something like, how much food can you get from an urban lot or something like that, or how much space do you need to feed a person? So one person, the average is 730,000 calories per year for the average person. And so I believe that my video has a couple living on an urban lot, and they're saying that that in a couple of years they think that they can grow enough food on their urban lot, and they're already growing sunchokes, that they could, and they had chickens and sunchokes, and they were even starting to plant stuff on the roof of their house. But they said that they felt like once the trees got bigger and things like that, that they would grow enough to feed a small person. So GamCod seems to have shown that we can do much better than that. And so we're seeing GamCod plots that are 200 square feet, but when you expand them out to an acre, you're growing something on the order of 17 million calories. And so effectively, you could feed 20 people on an acre. And the standard urban lot is a quarter of an acre, although a lot of that quarter of an acre is being taken up by a house and maybe other buildings. So on a standard urban lot, maybe you can do 1 million calories, which would be more food than one person. And so, but I'd say get started with sunchokes just in one corner of your urban lot. And because I remember being at somebody's house a couple of months ago looking at their sunchoke patch, and I was thinking that amount of food, that amount of sunchokes is enough to feed a person all winter. And it had only been a couple of years since they planted some sunchokes, and it wasn't even taking up very much of the yard. But the sheer volume of calories that come out of sunchokes is pretty profound. And so I'm kind of thinking it's possible that if on sunchokes alone you could probably, which was part of that couple in Portland, what they were doing is that they had a batch of sunchokes cooking on the stove, and they just kind of kept it going all day long every day, and they just ate sunchokes every day. And it's I kind of feel like that becomes one of the big staples instead of wheat, corn, and soy, which are the conventional American staples. And that's kind of I think that you could do quite a bit of food in a backyard. It might not be enough to feed, in a year or two, it might not be enough to feed all of one person, but it would be a very substantial dent. But I kind of feel like if we're going to talk about, we're doing with this whole, today's whole thing, if we're going to talk about, let's pretend for just a moment that 2 years from now, there's 70% unemployment, and the answer is a humble home and a big garden. I do believe that a big part of all of this is you got to move out of the city. And granted, it's a choice. Some people want to live in the city, and they've got an urban lot, and they can't grow very much food. That is a delightful choice. It comes at a price. If you're going to live out in the country and you've got a couple of acres per person, this is going to be really easy. But if you've got a quarter of an acre and you got 4 people to feed, that ain't going to get the job done, I don't think. I love the idea of being wrong. All right. Are there any other questions? Did we get to everybody?
I think we got it. Thank you.
All right. Okay. If you like this sort of thing, come on out to the forums at Permies.com, where we talk about how to get a home for free, homesteading and permaculture
all the time.
Put Paul's brain on your plot. Do you have a hunk of land but don't know where to start? Do you have a world-changing permaculture idea and you need some feedback? Do you feel like the guy in overalls may inexplicably hold the keys to all your wildest permaculture and homesteading dreams? Well, you're probably wrong. But if you want to give it a go anyway, you can hire Paul for a consultation. He will be all yours for a whole entire hour. Schedule your Paulversation today at Permies.com/consult. Permies.com/consult.